Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So today we'll hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, Text 21. Tatrata Shushrava Surit Vinashtim Tatrata Shushrava Surit Vinashtim Vanam Yatha Venujavani Samshayam Vanam Yatha Venujavani Samshayam Samsparshadhaya. I'm sorry, it's Samsparshadhaya. Dagdham Athanushocham Can I have a beat, please? No. I'd like an opportunity to finish the word. That's what I'm asking for. So just take a breath. Let me do my little thing. Samspardhaya Dagdham Athanushocham Samspardhaya Dagdham Athanushocham Saraswatim Pratyag Iyaya Tushnim Saraswatim Pratyagayaya Tushnim Tatrata Shushava Subrid Vinastim Panam Yata Venujavani Samshayam Samspardhaya Dagdham Athanushocham Saraswatim Pratyagijaya Tushnim Tatrata Shushava Surid Vinastim Padam Yata Venujavani Samshayam Samspardhaya Dagdham Athanushocham Saraswatim Pratyagayaya Tushnim.
Can you give me that meter, Tulsi? That was beautiful. Saraswatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnyam.
My tune's not good enough.
No, I just liked it when she sang that. I liked it. So I thought, ooh, I like that. Nothing's not good enough. It's just different. Different is lovely.
Following is also good. Anyone else, please? Any tune?
Ratra Suvara Suradistyam
Tatrata Susrava Suhridinashtyam
Vanam Yata Vinjaya Yati Sansrayam
Vanam Yata Venujavani Samshrayam
Sratmadiyam Dagdam Atiyastoshjam
Samspardaya Dagdam Anashajam Socham
Saravijam Pratak Idya Istam
Saraswatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnyam. Tatra,
there,
there,
Ata,
Ata,
thereafter,
thereafter,
Sushava,
Sushava,
heard,
heard,
Suhrit,
Surit,
kinsman,
kinsman,
Vinastim,
Dinastim,
all dead,
all dead,
Vanam,
Vanam,
forest,
forest,
Yata,
Yata,
as much as,
as much as,
Venujavani, fire due to the bamboos,
Fire due to the bamboos.
Samshayam,
Samshayam,
friction with one another, friction with one another,
Friction with one another.
Samspardhaya,
Samparnaya.
by violent passion,
By violent passion.
Dagtam,
Dagam.
burnt,
Burnt.
Ata,
Yata.
thus,
Thus.
Anushochan,
Asokam.
grieving,
Grieving.
Saraswatim,
Saraswati.
the river Saraswati,
The river Saraswati.
Pratyak,
Pratya.
westward,
Westward.
Iyaya,
Iyaya.
went,
Went.
Tushnim,
Tushim.
silently.
Silently.
Translation. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhasa, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west, where the river Saraswati flows. Responsibly, please. At the place of pilgrimage at Prabhasa,
At the place of pilgrimage at Pramasa,
it came to his knowledge
it came to his knowledge
that all his relatives had died
that all his relatives had died
due to violent passion,
due to violent passion,
just as an entire forest
just as an entire forest
burns
burns
due to fire
due to fire
produced by the friction of bamboos.
produced by the friction of bamboos.
After this, he proceeded west,
After this, he proceeded west,
where the river Saraswati flows.
where the river Saraswati flows.
Srila Prabhupada's purport. Both the Kauravas and the Yadavas were relatives of Vidura, and Vidura heard of their extinction due to fratricidal war. The comparison of the friction of forest bamboos to that of passionate human societies is appropriate. The whole world is compared to a forest. At any moment, there may be a flare-up of fire in the forest due to friction. No one goes to the forest to set down fire, except in America. But due only to friction between bamboos, fire takes place and burns an entire forest. Similarly, in the greater forest of worldly transaction, the fire of war takes place because of the violent passion of conditioned souls illusioned by the external energy. Such a worldly fire can be extinguished only by the water of the mercy cloud of saints, just as a forest fire can be extinguished only by rains falling from a cloud. Om Ajnana-Timirandhasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Jatkripatamam Vande Shri Gurum Dinataram Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Tatrata Sushada Suhritvinastim Panam Yathavenu Javani Samshrayam Samspardhaya Dagdam Mathanusho Cham Saraswatim Pratyagiyaya Tushnim. place of pilgrimage at Prabhas, it came to his knowledge that all his relatives had died due to violent passion, just as an entire forest burns due to fire produced by the friction of bamboos. After this, he proceeded west where the river Saraswati flows. I'm a little confused about the location of this Prabhas. There's a Prabhasa, a little southeast of Dwarka. There's a Prabhasa in southern India, South India. And I would assume this took place at Prabhasa near Dwarka in Gujarat. However, I don't know how you go west to where the river Saraswati flows from there, because you're on the shore of the ocean. But regardless of that, this was one of the things that, one of the experiences that Vidura had when he went out on pilgrimage. He got to Prabhasa Kshetra, and he found that his entire sorry, I'm getting a call in my hearing aids. Sorry. My friend Agni did. So he got to Prabhasa Kshetra and he found out that his entire family had been wiped out because of this big fight. They'd gotten into a fight. And this comes up a couple of places in the Bhagavatam toward the end of the first canto, the 14th chapter of the first canto. The destruction of the Yadu dynasty is brought up. And it's brought up here again at the beginning of the third canto, and we see it here, and then again in the fourth chapter it's mentioned a little more. And in both places, this imagery of friction between bamboos creating a forest fire. In other words, this is something that happens. This happens in the world. That because there's a bunch of people and each of us sees ourselves as the center of the universe, there's naturally going to be friction. Whenever my interests conflict with yours, there's going to be friction between us. And there might be some problems, there might be some words, there might be something more. This happens. This is a different instance, however, although it's compared to that. And it's compared to that for a particular reason, which we'll get to in a minute. We also see in each of the places that this is brought up that this is not the result of some interaction with the modes of material nature. It's not the result of the material nature at all, but this was something that was created by the Lord through his internal potency, through his spiritual potency for a particular purpose, as we'll see. But the lesson we can get from it is that there will always be difficulty in the material world. Krishna sums up our experience in this world in 2 words in Bhagavad Gita, as I point out maybe every other time I open my mouth. Dukalayam Shashvatam. Life stinks and then you die. It's just the way it is. There will always be some difficulty. There'll be pleasure here and there, but there's also going to be pain or some kind of suffering, even if it's just inconvenience. That's just the nature of the world. And so we see in many places our situation in this world being compared to a forest fire. and as Srila Prabhupada points out here, the only way to extinguish a forest fire is you've got a big rain clouds, big rainstorm coming. And we see this, well, I would say in California, but this last year we saw it all over the West. The whole West was in conflagration. And you know, you could bring in your hot spot, you know, forest firefighter folks, as many as you like, as many as you could round up. And the last couple of years we had firefighters from North America going to Australia to help them fight their fires down there. And then we had firefighters from all over the world coming to help control the fires in the western part of the United States, all up and down California, but also more deeply into the continent. That's the nature. I mean, you know, these things happen. Forest fires happen in the summer in certain parts of the world. So, you know, and what the firefighters are hoping for is a storm system. They're hoping for big rain clouds to come in because they can try to contain it. You know, they can bring in the planes and dump water and the fire suppressants and all these other things on the fire. But sometimes those things aren't even all that helpful. What can they do? And then they can try to contain the fire by making fire breaks and things like that and trying to create backfires and all the things that they do. But the real thing, unless the fuel becomes just completely exhausted because it goes on and on forever, the real thing that all the firefighters are hoping for, that everyone's hoping for, is a big rain cloud to come, because then that'll be enough water to put out the fire. So our existence in this world is also compared to a burning fire. And the only way that that can be adequately dealt with is by the mercy of the sadhus, the mercy of the saints, mercy of the spiritual master. So every morning we sing Samsaradava Nalabita Lokatranaya Karamukanakanata. That this world is a blazing forest fire. And the mercy of the spiritual master is like rain clouds that come to extinguish that forest fire. However, I also mentioned that this isn't the kind of natural sort of thing that you would expect, because this is Krishna's family. The Yadu and Buru dynasties, this is Krishna's family. These are pious people. Some of them are Krishna's personal associates, eternal personal associates, and others are devas who've come to participate in some of Krishna's pastimes. And so they're all very elevated personalities. So how is it that such elevated personalities who are naturally prone to worshiping saintly persons and behaving in a noble manner, how is it that they would get into such a fight among themselves that they would practically wipe out the entire family? This is Krishna's arrangement through his internal energy for a particular purpose. The Yadu dynasty was quite large and extremely powerful. And Krishna was getting ready to wind up his own pastimes here in this world. But he had one concern about leaving, and that was that there would be no one who could control the Yadu dynasty. Because they were Kshatriyas, they were fiery by nature, they were passionate, aggressive by nature. There's always a chance that something could go wrong. And there was no one who could quell any trouble that might be brought about by some rambunctiousness in the Yadu dynasty. So Krishna created an occasion for the Yadu dynasty to wipe itself out. When Srila Prabhupada was reading from the end of the first canto in Los Angeles in December of 1973, after, I don't remember quite which verse it was probably from the 14th chapter. I could probably look and see if I can find out. But after Pradyumna read the verse and the purport, Srila Prabhupada said, and this was in December of 73, so there were some serious disruptions going on in the Krishna Consciousness Society at the time, one of which was here in the islands. During the course of that year, the leaders of the society here in Hawaii apparently became exhausted with the burdens of management and all the things that they were doing, and actually closed down all the temples in the islands. We had a couple of places on Kauai, we had a place on Maui, we had a couple of properties on the Big Island, and we had in Namadweep here, in Manoa Valley on McKinley Street, and they were all closed down. This caused some disruption in the society, and certainly made sure the Prabhupada concerned enough that when the fallout from this caused such a disruption in the mission that my then wife and I had to introduce Krishna consciousness in Peru, and the effort became thwarted by the politics generated as part of the fallout of this, because I was from here. I ended up back in LA, and Srila Prabhupada had a private meeting with my wife and my friend, one of my friends, old friends from here, Turan Kanti, and myself, for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours probably. And so that's a pretty big disturbance that he would talk to a couple of people. I mean, we weren't ISKCON bigs by any stretch of anyone's imagination. But Srila Prabhupada cleared his calendar one morning to meet privately with us and discuss what was going on, see how we were doing, and try to see what he could do to relieve the situation here, repair the situation here. So in the middle of all this going on, and here I was in LA specifically to meet with Srila Prabhupada about this particular thing, this kind of squabbling among the devotees. Srila Prabhupada, before he began to speak, he just made an observation. He said, the Yadu dynasty, because they're Krishna's family, they were so powerful that no one could defeat them. They could only be defeated by fighting among themselves. So that really struck me, considering the situation. So as I mentioned, this comes up a couple of places. It comes up here at the beginning of the third canto. It comes up toward the end of the first canto, and right at the beginning of the 11th canto. This pastime at Prabhas Kshetra among the members of the Yadu dynasty. So I thought it would be nice just to hear the pastime. I could try to tell it, but I'm definitely going to, I'm inevitably going to miss something really cool. So I thought I would just read the translations of these verses from chapter 1 of the 11th canto. So here, the main part of the 11th canto is the Uddhava Gita. This is Uddhava receiving instruction directly from Krishna. And the occasion of Uddhava's receiving that instruction was he was being sent to Badarikashram by the Lord. And but Uddhava had discerned, because of this pastime, he had discerned that Krishna's pastimes were about to wind up. That there had been all these inauspicious omens, and we see these as well at the end of the first canto when Yudhishthira is speaking with Arjuna, and Arjuna's been gone to Dwarka for some time, some long time, a period of time, and Yudhishthira and the others are becoming worried what's going on. And so then Arjuna shows up, not looking so hot, and Yudhishthira's all of a sudden he's really worried, so he starts asking him, are you okay? And he says that all these signs and your demeanor, they all tell me that something awful has happened. And could it be that Krishna's pastimes are power that is gone? And what are we going to do after that? How's it going? So Arjuna confirms his suspicions, and he said, yeah, how powerful I was. I even got defeated by a bunch of cowards, man, because Krishna, all the power that I had came from Krishna, and Krishna's gone, and that's been withdrawn, and it's time for us to wind up our pastimes too. So here at the beginning of the first canto, at the beginning of the 11th canto, we're shown this pastime in some detail, greater detail than the other places, because this is a prelude to Lord Krishna's preparation to give up his pastimes. And Uddhava has understood this. He's inferred from all the signs that Krishna is about to wind up his pastimes, and he's asking Krishna, seems to me like you're done and you're about to go. So make sure you don't leave me behind. And Krishna says, well, about that, there's something interesting. He says, I actually need you to stay behind and learn a little bit more. And he gives him this extended instruction throughout many chapters in the 11th canto. So as the prelude to that, we see how it is that the Yadu dynasty wiped itself out. Let's see if I can actually do this. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Lord Sri Krishna, accompanied by Balaram and surrounded by the Yadu dynasty, executed the killing of many demons. Then, further to remove the burden of the earth, the Lord arranged for the great battle of Kurukshetra, which suddenly erupted in violence between the Kurus and the Pandavas. This is all part of Krishna's plan. Because the sons of Pandu were enraged by the numerous offenses of their enemies, such as duplicitous gambling, verbal insults, which we heard about. Duryodhana is pretty good at insulting. The seizing of Draupadi's hair and many other cruel transgressions, the Supreme Lord engaged those Pandavas as the immediate cause to execute his will. On the pretext of the battle of Kurukshetra, Lord Krishna arranged for all the kings who were burdening the earth to assemble their armies on opposite sides of the battlefield. And when the Lord killed them through the agency of war, the earth was relieved of its burden. The Supreme Personality of Godhead used the Yadu dynasty, which was protected by his own arms, to eliminate the kings who with their armies had been the burden of this earth. Then the unfathomable Lord thought to himself, although some may say that the earth's burden is now gone, in my opinion it is not yet gone, because there still remains the Yadava dynasty itself, whose strength is unbearable for the earth. Lord Krishna thought no outside force could ever bring about the defeat of this family, the Yadu dynasty, whose members have always been fully surrendered to me and are unrestricted in their opulence. But if I inspire a quarrel within the dynasty, that quarrel will act just like a fire created from the friction of bamboo in a grove. Same image a third time, right? In other words, it appears just the nature of things, but there's more going on here. My dear King Parikshit, when the Supreme Almighty Lord, whose desire always comes to pass, had thus made up his mind, he withdrew his own family on the pretext of a curse spoken by an assembly of Brahmanas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the reservoir of all beauty. All beautiful things emanate from him, and his personal form is so attractive that it steals the eyes away from all other objects, which then seem devoid of beauty in comparison to him. When Lord Krishna was on the earth, he attracted the eyes of all people. When Krishna spoke, his words attracted the minds of all who remembered them. By seeing the footsteps of Lord Krishna, people became attracted to him, and thus they wanted to offer their bodily activities to the Lord as his followers. In this way, Krishna very easily spread his glories, which are sung throughout the world by the most sublime and essential Vedic verses. Lord Krishna considered that simply by hearing and chanting those glories, conditioned souls born in the future would cross beyond the darkness of ignorance. Being satisfied with this arrangement, he left for his desired destination. King Parikshit inquired, how could the Brahmanas curse the Vrishnis?
Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki.
King Parikshit inquired, how could the Brahmanas curse the Vrishnis, who were always respectful to the Brahmanas, charitable, and inclined to serve senior and exalted personalities, and whose minds were always fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna? What was the motive for this curse? What did it consist of, O purest of the twice born? And how could such a disagreement have arisen among the Yadus who all shared the same goal of life? Please tell me all these things. Shukadeva Goswami said, the Lord who bore his body as the amalgamation of everything beautifully, dutifully executed the most auspicious activities while on the earth, although he was, in fact, without any endeavor already satisfied in all desires. Residing in his abode and enjoying life, the Lord, whose glorification is in itself magnanimous, now wanted to annihilate his dynasty, as there still remains some part of his duty to be carried out. The sages Vishvamitra, Asita, Kanva, Durvasa, Bhrigu, Angira, Kashyapa, Vamadeva, Atri, and Vashishta, along with Narada and others, once performed fruit of rituals that award abundant pious results, bring great happiness, and take away the sins of Kali Yuga for the whole world by merely being recounted. Just remembering, just talking about them. So purifying. The sages duly executed these rituals in the home of the chief of the Yadus, Vasudeva, the father of Lord Krishna. After Lord Krishna, who was staying in Vasudeva's house as time personified, respectfully sent the sages off at the conclusion of the ceremonies, they went to the holy place called Pindaraka. To that holy place, the young boys of the Yadu dynasty had brought Samba, son of Jambavati, dressed in a woman's garb. Boys. Playfully approaching the great sages gathered there, the boys grabbed hold of the sages' feet and impudently asked them with feigned humility, "Oh, learned Brahmanas, this black-eyed pregnant woman has something to ask you. She's too embarrassed to inquire for herself. She's just about to give birth and is very desirous of having a son. Since all of you are great sages with infallible vision, please tell us whether her child will be a boy or a girl." So this was before ultrasound. Thus, ridiculed by deceit, the sages became angry, O king, and told the boys, "Fools, she will bear you an iron club that will destroy your entire dynasty." Upon hearing the curse of the sages, the terrified boys quickly uncovered the belly of Samba, and indeed they observed that therein was an iron club. The young men of the Yadu dynasty said, "Oh, what have we done? We're so unfortunate. What will our family members say to us?" This is a very polite way of saying, bunch of dopes we are going to get into so much trouble when we get home. Speaking thus and being very disturbed, they returned to their homes, taking the club with them. The Yadu boys The luster of their faces completely faded, brought the club into the royal assembly, and in the presence of all the Yadavas, they told King Ugrasena what had happened. Oh, King Bricket, when the inhabitants of Dwarka heard the infallible curse of the Brahmanas and saw the club, they were astonished and distraught with fear. After having the club ground to bits, King Ahuka, Ugrasena of the Yadus, personally threw the pieces along with the remaining lump of iron into the water of the ocean. A certain fish swallowed the iron lump and the bits of iron, carried back to the shore by waves, implanted themselves there, and grew into tall, sharp canes. So this makes it sound like the Prabhasa in the vicinity of Dwarka. The fish was caught in the ocean along with other fish in a fisherman's net. The iron lump in the fish's stomach was taken by the hunter Jara, who fixed it as an arrowhead at the end of his shaft. Knowing fully the significance of all these events, the Supreme Lord, though capable of reversing the Brahmana's curse, did not wish to do so. Rather, just realized I'm going to need to turn the page here. Rather, in his form of time, he gladly sanctioned the events. Oh, I'm not getting the Wi-Fi. Sorry, technical difficulties. I need one of those little screens for the video. This is not connecting. Incorrect password. Forget it. So, anyway, what happened next was, as we probably know, all the iron filings from the grinding up of that club washed up as we read, on waves on the shore of the ocean, and they grew into reeds, but they didn't grow into just like grass weeds. The seeds were made of iron, so what's the plant going to be? Going to be iron. So they grew into iron reeds. And that thing that was picked up by the hunter Jara, we will see that later as well, in the pastime of Krishna's personal disappearance. And so the members of the Yadu dynasty, because Kshatriyas occasionally can drink wine and things on particular occasions, they had a little too much, they had way too much rice wine. Quarrels broke out, as happens, those of us who've been to such establishments or parties, teenage parties where these so-called adult beverages were served, and of course we weren't adults, we don't know how to handle them. There would inevitably be a fight at these parties, or sometimes in these public establishments, sometimes fights break out because people's inhibitions are suppressed by the effects of alcohol. And all but a few of them were wiped out, as we'll see. So these things happen. This particular thing happened under the influence of Krishna's Yoga Maya. This is not Mahamaya. So, when the question arises, as it inevitably does, as it did in King Parikshit's mind as well, how could this possibly happen with such pious people? This is Krishna's personal arrangement, in imitation of the kinds of things that naturally happen in this world. So, it's a warning on a number of levels, but Srila Prabhupada made it a warning to us, the members of his Krishna Consciousness Society, that if we wanted the society to flourish, we needed to learn to work cooperatively, as he asked us so many times. And he wrote me personally at the same, just at this time, and sanctioned my coming back here. His big concern was that I not give up the company of devotees because of the problems that were going on at the time. He said, we have created something significant in the form of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and we're all one family. We are all one family. So we shouldn't become disturbed and go away. He said that the real test of a disciple's mature desire to satisfy the spiritual master will be in this cooperative spirit. So Srila Prabhupada used this pastime to give us that lesson as well. That the only way our work could be defeated was by our failure to cooperate among ourselves and help manifest Lord Chaitanya's mission in this world. So, anyway, we're out of time. Does anybody have any quick questions or comments?
I was thinking, was this Mahabharata war already done by then? Or?
I beg your pardon?
Because Prabhupada says the fighting was also including the Yadavas and Kauravas, so which means the Mahabharata war was done too?
Yes, this is after the Mahabharata war.
In Mahabharata, Mata Gandhari also cursed to Krishna. My family is like fighting and die, so your family have to also go to same way die. Mother Gandhari took cursed to Krishna also.
Yeah.
Last in the Mahabharata.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you. Grataraja Srimad Bhagavatam.